What were our experiences like? Did we actually feel it was hard for us growing up as an Asian guy in the US? Was dating more difficult, especially when it came to interracial dating? And today we're going to talk about, is it actually more difficult for Asian guys to date in the US? This is a very hot topic, so we're very excited to dive in. The first thing that we do want to talk about today is, what were our experiences like? Did we actually feel it was hard for us growing up as an Asian guy in the US? Was dating more difficult, especially when it came to interracial dating? So this is where I'm going to just send it over to you, Ray. What were your experiences like? And what were your thoughts?
Yeah, experiences. I mean, to really get into this, I think we have to start with a little bit of a story, but that would make this video too long. So I'm going to jump right into, was it more difficult? I would say yes. Um, there's a book called Dataclysm that was written, I think, by I think it was OK Cupid, um, and he basically um, created this book based on all the data that he created, and Jeremy and I both, like, we know a little bit about it, but it ranked us as Asian men um, in the lowest category out of all the different ethnicities. And it was, I think, my first time in my late 20s that found that I found that data, and I'll say also OkCupid's data, but it correlated with my own experiences because I was looking through my matches and I was like, hey, how come I'm getting matches from or likes from certain ethnicities and not likes from other ethnicities? I was like, that's a weird
Yeah,
coincidence.
it was, yeah, same thing here.
Yeah. Um, and uh, ever since I realized that, I became a lot more cognizant of it when at least doing online dating. I think in general, I've also heard somebody else say this is pretty funny. Being Asian as a guy is kind of like playing this game on nightmare mode.
Yeah, for all you gamers out there.
Yeah. So it's like there's like easy, intermediate, hard, and then nightmare mode, and we're like, this is the most difficult level. Or maybe I should just flip that: easy, intermediate, hard, and then nightmare mode. So if you get good at being Asian and dating, then if you ever in your next life you believe in reincarnation,
Mhm.
um,
You'll be a pimp.
you'll just, yeah, you'll nail it. You'll nail everyone. What about you, Jeremy? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's more difficult, like no doubt. I mean, growing up, and especially in my 20s, that's when I was trying to like branch out of dating Asian women. There were times girls would straight up tell me I don't date Asian guys. And let me tell you, that shit really hurt. I was just like, how
Yeah,
dare you, you racist.
it's like that problem. You're like, and you know what? That really hurt. And I was like, fuck you. And then like the guy transforms his body.
Hmm. I mean, basically, that's how I think most Asian guys also get into the gym, right? They're like, we take our pain and put it into the gym. But yeah, it was more difficult. I had women say I don't date Asian guys, and I think a lot of times my experiences in the 20s kind of validate that, right? Because other Asian guys mentioned it was more difficult for them. And in general, especially in LA, a lot of guys complain about dating because it feels like dating is really reserved for the most attractive people. But if I was seeing that with other Asian guys, it kind of validated that. And then we also saw studies that talked about how Asian guys have to make is it $247,000 more than their white counterpart or black counterpart.
To
And
be at the same level. Right?
yeah, exactly. And I don't know how much I believe that in terms of the specific number, but I do think it shows that there is a disparity in the dating market. So if a lot of Asian guys are complaining about it, I don't think it's just a coincidence. I think it is reality. And this can be a whole topic in of itself. But I think the nature of the history of Asian Americans in the U.S., especially the way we were portrayed as effeminate, the ones that ran laundromats, grocery stores, and stuff like that, right? I think it definitely led to the depiction of Asian guys as asexual and not masculine. And people are consumers of culture. Most people like to think that they think for themselves, but the reality is we are molded by our environment and media. And women are no different in the U.S. And if Asian guys aren't portrayed in a nice light, then obviously it makes it more difficult for us to date outside of our race,
Yeah.
and sometimes even in our race because of the way that we're portrayed.
Yeah. You know what? Funny you mention that. First of all, the Chinese Exclusion Act back in 1882, passed by Congress and signed by President Chester A. Arthur. This act provided an absolute 10-year ban on Chinese laborers. Um, and so, I mean, the United States has a pleasant history of,
They were so scared of us stealing all their women, I guess.
there's a whole bunch of acts. Anyway, But Jeremy, you're actually reminding me. It's funny, I haven't thought about this in a while. But in high school, uh, I think in the back of our minds as Asian guys, we've always kind of had this suspicion. But I remember asking this girl out. I'm not gonna name her name, but I had a crush on her, and she ended up turning me down and dating, going out and dating this other white guy instead. And ironically enough, uh, I'm not gonna, but he
She
had a,
told, she said she wasn't ready for her relationship.
yeah, she was like, I'm not really looking right now. And then yeah, later on I heard like he ended up fucking the shit out of her, and then they ended up being together. But he ended up dating quite a few girls, and he was a tall, good-looking white guy. And here I was, not tall and not white, um, though I got a few compliments in high school, but I mean nowhere near this guy's level because I think even then, her being an Asian girl, I don't think I got nearly the same amount of attention.
But let's also be honest. In high school, I think we were not in our peak shape yet.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
but he was. Um, but the reason I bring this up is because I don't even know that I consciously knew that there was this bias against me. But in hindsight, looking back at it, it probably existed back then a lot more than I was consciously aware of, um, as like a skinny Asian teenager in high school. So all in all, um, don't I mean, growing up in America, you don't really hear a lot of them being like, "Yeah, I love Asian guys. They're the best, better than any other." There's a lot of, I mean, we're not usually the favorite group, let's just say.
Yeah.
So I think in one shape, way, or form or another, we all are exposed to that. So so ultimately, I think the answer to that is everyone's got their experiences. I'm sure we can go on plenty more stories about how we were discriminated against and how we turned down.
Yeah, there's
Girls.
always going to be that Asian bro though in the comments.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have a struggle dating outside of my race. I'm in a polyamorous relationship with five hot white girls. To those guys, fuck you.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm 6'3", by the way. He's like, oh wow,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't think that plays a role at all.
He's like, yeah, that's strange. I don't know what you guys are talking
It's
about.
like,
I have a
you
great
guys,
time with women.
you guys just have self-limiting beliefs.
Yeah,
That's
you
it.
just need to believe.
You
You need to
only get
you
what
just
you
need more.
deserve.
Yeah, you
You
need
only
to
get what
be Jeremy. You need to be more
you only
confident.
get what you think you deserve in
Yeah,
life.
it's because you don't have enough riz, bro. Um,
Yeah, but that
but
actually leads to not to cut you off, but that goes to the point that I want to talk about is what do you think the reality is like? Because when we were doing this shit, we were like this is like early 2000s, 2010, 2011, 2015 maybe latest approximately. But nowadays, I would say wouldn't you say it's a little bit different for Asian guys in terms of like the dating market and opportunities, especially with like BTS, K-pop, and better Asian American male representation?
I would. In fact, there's a movie that just came out that you may have heard about called Barbie, and in this movie, the white blonde Ken is Ryan Gosling. But what really surprised me was that the there's an Asian character in there too, and he's an Asian Ken, and
Hmm.
it's played by Simu Liu, who weirdly enough, a lot of people think that I look like him, or he looks like me, or we look like each other. But like, I was very surprised because I think the representation is increasing ever since Crazy Rich Asians and BTS and like
Hmm.
um, because and the reason why I say this, I think it's going to have a huge influence on the future generations.
You're welcome, by the way.
But before we went to this point, Jeremy, I wanted to comment on what you said earlier about there's going to be some haters saying, "Oh no, it's not that tough." Um, we are not saying that in all cases, just by being Asian, that you're doomed. Of course,
Yeah,
there are exceptions. I think we can
yeah.
comment on that a little bit. Like,
Yeah, I mean, like if you're a good-looking guy, if you're charismatic, if you grow up around a lot of white people and you kind of know their culture and can kind of relate to them, that definitely is helpful. Um, and when we say Asian guys are at a disadvantage, we do not want you to mope around in like self-pity and say like, "Oh, I'm
yeah,
screwed. These guys validated it. Why should I even be in the U.S.? Let me move, right?" Which is actually a viable option if you want to just move and be a passport bro. But I don't want to say that as an Asian guy you are internally screwed because that is definitely not the case.
Right.
But the guys that do well, they tend to have something going for them, right? It's either they're very charismatic and or they have, physical attributes that women swoon for, like height, muscle mass,
Yeah.
stuff like that, right? But yeah, you're not doomed.
Right. Right. And to piggyback on that, I agree. I agree with the height. I think there are certain features. I think we both agree that there are certain features um, that can transcend uh,
Race.
being Asian race. Uh,
Transcend your race.
yeah,
B64.
yeah, yeah. Just
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 grow
be six
taller.
four.
Just grow taller. It's not that
Yeah,
hard.
it's really simple. Just be successful, make more money, be 6'4", be buff,
By
get
the
nice.
time you're 22, by the way. Otherwise, you're too late.
Yeah, yeah. You need to do all this before you're 22. But uh, obviously, to a certain degree, it's not like all people are born racist, but if you're in America and you're exposed to certain media, you kind of have an unconscious bias. Like a lot of women
Oh
are,
yeah, yeah.
like even dating internationally and domestically, like women are still. It's 2023. Women are still saying, "Oh, do Asian men have small penises?" No. What the?
We ran into that in different countries too, especially countries that weren't known to have anti-Asian racism like the U.S. And that was the most frustrating thing,
Yeah.
right? We're just like, yo, these women haven't seen an Asian penis before. Maybe they've seen one, but but like they haven't seen Asian penises en masse, right? And like we encountered this in Mexico for you, right?
Yeah.
And then we're like, yo, there's not a lot of Asian people in Mexico. Yeah, obviously there's a few Chinese people there, but even like I remember there's one Polish girl. She says like Asian guys, they have a stereotype. At least she liked Asian guys, but her friends thought Asian men might have small penises. And I'm like, these women have never dated Asian guys most likely. So why do they think that? And it's not like they're looking at Asian penises online. I hope not.
Yeah.
So it's just like, where's this coming from?
Yeah. And I actually heard like I still need to verify this, but I think I saw in a documentary before that in American culture during slave times, African Americans were associated with being like beasts, and so there's a rumor being like, oh, these are slaves, they're like beasts, they have small heads and big genitalia like animals, they're not very intelligent. And on the flip side, there were a bunch of rumors and acts started with for Asian because a lot of Chinese people came for the railroads, right, to help build the railroads, and yet there are a lot of rumors to not assimilate Asian people into the culture. So there's a lot of things that were going on, and these rumors. But on the flip side, that was for Asian men. On the flip side, for Asian women, there was like a book written about Japanese geishas, about how submissive they were, and that carried on through time. And now Asian women had this like submissive today have a submissive kind of allure to them. This rumor, right?
It's funny how it's almost like we're polar opposites. Asian women are sexualized, but Asian men are desexualized.
Yeah. And so I mean, not all black guys have big dicks, but you know what? The rumor definitely works in their favors.
Yeah.
Their favor. And all Asian guys have small penises. Some guys have small penises. Some guys have large penises. Dude, here's the other crazy thing. A lot of people think Asian people are short. Have you ever been to northern China?
Those motherfuckers be tall, man.
Those guys are huge.
They're not eating rice. They're eating that wheat and shit.
Yeah, those guys are huge. That's like Mongolians or that's where Yao Min. How tall is Yao Min?
Like 7'6".
Yeah, dude, Yao Min. He is
Yao Ming.
Yao Ming is 7'6". He's gigantic. Okay, he's from the north. But the thing is, the northern part of China is usually it's closer to Russia. They're usually not as wealthy as say like the southeastern part of China, but they're short
Like the
regions.
crafty Chinese, like us.
Yeah, and those that part of China were the wealthier merchants and traders and businessmen that were able
Yeah.
to immigrate. So a lot of the northern Chinese, these giant Chinese people that a lot of people don't think of when they think of Chinese, they're the ones that didn't really leave the country as much as their
Yeah.
Southeast Asian. And I'd love to hear your comments below if you guys have facts to disprove or prove what I'm saying. But
Yep.
um, that's at least my theory in terms of why Asian people, the ones that did immigrate to other countries, were shorter. We don't hear about I mean, the how many billions of people? I think like three. How many China?
China has like one
1.4 billion
yeah.
people. We don't hear about that these huge Chinese people because I think in the U.S. The Chinese population, the Asian population is 5.4 million. Wow, that's very small.
That's pretty small compared to like 323,
Yeah,
330 million.
yeah, 1.4 billion in China
Yeah,
alone. In the US, we have 18 million
Asian people.
Asians in the entire US
Yeah,
and 5 million just Chinese. So you can see how small um, that ratio is for the Chinese people that actually immigrated here versus the the billions. And
yeah.
keep in mind, if you don't know math very well, a billion is 1,000 million. So 5 out of 1,000 Chinese people, 5 out of 1,000 Chinese people came here. That's the stereotype and the representation and the impression that people have here in America.
Mhm.
It's obviously a very, very small sample size, and then people are making these broad generalizations like, oh, Asian people are short, Asian people are rich, and Asian people are wealthy. The rich, smart, wealthy people were able to immigrate. Those are the ones we see. We don't see all the poor, dumb. It's just like America. We have highs and lows, and rich and poor, and dumb and
Mhm.
smart, and short and fat. We have everything, everything. But interesting enough, America took this small little sample size and made a broad generalization. Like, oh, Asian people are this way, and it's like, if anything, it's pure ignorance.
People are just cognitively lazy too. Like we have to, our mind works to generalize, to like save time, and most people don't think critically. So I'm not saying it's an excuse, but human nature is just kind of like that,
No,
and human tendency. But going back to the point of, do you think it is easier nowadays? Like, what do you think makes it better for Asian guys? We talked about media, K-pop, Asian American male representation in the media. I think that all has helped. Is there anything else that you think has made it easier for, let's say, Gen Z and younger Asian guys, like date outside their race? Besides all the hard work that we put in for you guys,
uh, honestly, I really think the media is really
media is a big one.
shaping. And the reason why I say this is because I don't know if I ever told you this story, Jeremy, but there's this girl that I was chatting with way back, and she was pretty voluptuous, um, and a little bit dark in complexion. She was younger. I think she was probably like 15 years younger than me or something like that. So, but she had brought up, in fact, so first I was like kind of confused because normally a girl like that and me wouldn't really sync up. But so I asked her like, how did this happen? Like, where did you like? When did you become attracted to Asian? Like, have you dated an Asian guy before? And she actually started talking about how when she was younger, she watched this Cinderella movie, and in the Cinderella movie, the Cinderella was black, and the prince was an Asian man.
Oh, hmm.
Yeah, and so it was
There
like
was
a
a. Is it Disney?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I think it was Brandy. Brandy was the
What was the
was
voice?
Cinderella,
Hmm.
and the prince was an Asian guy, and it was live action. It was in a cartoon,
Oh, okay.
and that was the first time she, I think as a little girl, it was like kind of
Kind
imprinted.
of shaped her, right? Yeah.
Yeah, imprinted on her like the archetype of this like that Asian men can be handsome, and that was like that was like Disney trying to kind of branch off and be creative, and then nothing like that was created for years,
Yep.
right? But it's interesting because I think that really shapes um, the archetypes of what people find attractive in the future.
Hmm.
And then growing up, they oftentimes like for me it was like we grew up in the time like Pamela Anderson and Baywatch and all
Yeah, just
that, right?
hot blonde girls,
Yeah,
attractive white people.
yeah. We're
Yeah.
like big, busty, um, like
Boobs
hourglass,
going out of their turtleneck.
Playboy, Hugh Hefner, right? A
Yeah.
lot of that era. So can't say that it didn't unconsciously affect me.
Yeah, that's a very fair point. I could say very much the same. But how about you all? What are your thoughts? Do you think Asian guys have it more difficult in the past, present, and maybe even the future? Or do you think we're going to have it easier? If you like this episode and topic, please give us a like and subscribe. And if you have any comments, if you want to flame us or give us kind words of affirmation, which we would appreciate very greatly, because I thrive off that, by the way, you leave it down in the comments below, and we'll see you all next time.